You're listening to The Jeff Zapp Show.
He's not a conspiracy theorist. He's just a patriot, standing for God, family, and country. Now, here's your host, the Zapper.
All right, here we go, folks. Buckle up. Make sure that you are remaining seated for the duration of the show. It's that time again, folks. Welcome to Thursday, 2 June 2022, the year of our Lord. The Jeff Zapp Show, live streaming tonight. Tonight on Facebook, streaming if I can speak tonight, along with YouTube and Rumble. And we've got a special guest that'll be joining us in just a few minutes. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, wherever you are, or if you're listening to us on the podcast, which you might be driving down the road, listening as you get some windshield time. I greatly appreciate you coming alongside us in all of the wonderful words of encouragement, whether that's through social media, email. Hey, listen, do me a favor. If you haven't already done so, make sure that you're going to our website to get all the latest information, including some of the archived broadcasts and links to our social media. It's thejeffzappshow.com. Pretty easy to remember. And if you'd like to help out the program, defray some of the costs for production, I've got a link up there to buy me a cup of coffee. And really, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, I'm not in this for the fame, the fortune. I'm doing this because I feel God's called me to do this. And he's given me these great looks for broadcasting. That's a joke. If you are watching me on live stream here, I mean, I've been blessed with this kind of reddish skin and this red hair, and I've been the brunt of many jokes through my 52 years of life. But I do appreciate if you go there and check out thejeffzappshow.com, and you'll see the links to Telegram, Truth Social, and Rumble. I decided to start dabbling back into Facebook. And some people think, well, that's like, the evil empire. I had to get a cup of coffee. Life is juice. But no, I think the crazy times that we're in, we have to take advantage if we're not deplatformed yet or banned from certain platforms, even though I am throttled quite a bit, to kind of get back into the water, get back into the fray and back into the fight. So you can check us out. We are live streaming, I think, right now, and the comments should be open. We are on Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube this evening, so go check us out. Appreciate all of our listeners, like I mentioned, that send me emails, which you can do that. If you want to be on the show or you have a guest or a topic that you would like to present to me, I encourage you to send me an email. It's jeff@thejeffzappshow.com. All the links, again, are currently on my website. Tonight, we will be opening the phone lines, which will be fantastic because we're going to have some Q&A. And in just a minute, I'm going to do an introduction to one of my colleagues and friends from up north. But the phone lines will be open tonight for Q&A. We call it Open Line Thursday, 843-305-3075. That's right, 843-305-3075. So write that number down and don't be afraid to call in because we're not going to attack you. I am the town crier, and my role here is simply to point others to the truth. I always said I'm one beggar telling other beggars where I found the bread of life. So here's what's going on. There's a lot of news going on. And listen, I appreciate you listening on Tuesday. I was really fired up. There's a lot going on here, not only locally in Beaufort County, South Carolina, across the state, across the nation, but in North America. And tonight, I'm really pleased to have, as I mentioned earlier, a good friend, a colleague of mine. I actually met him a couple years ago. Actually, maybe it's been more than that. Brandon will have to chime in on this. We're both voice actors. He's a lot better looking and sounds better than I do. He's a very talented young man. It's an honor and a privilege to know Brandon McCaskill. He's a very talented guy as well. He's, left, right brain individual. And he's a writer, a musician, an actor. I mean, he's jack of all trades, master of a few. He's a family man, and most importantly, he's a brother in Christ. So he's a follower of Jesus Christ. And just like me, unabashedly speaking the truth, standing for what's right in his country up in Canada. And I noticed recently that he was doing a live stream. You can go into the show notes and see the link to his YouTube channel, Brando on the Go. So Brandon McCaskill will be joining us here in just a minute. But I just wanted to say, we need more and more people like Brandon, this younger generation. It gives me hope as an old red dude now, and in my 50s. I still think that I'm in my 20s, but the reality is, unless I die young, I'm not getting out of this one alive. So until God calls me home or Jesus comes back, which that'd be fine with me if he came back real soon to clean up the mess, we're going to have to continue to stand for what's right and for the truth. And so without any further chit chat, please join me in welcoming my good buddy, Brandon McCaskill. Brando, what's going on?
How's it going, man?
Hey, hey, it worked. How about
It worked.
this, huh?
We're here.
I love it. Thanks for joining us on the Jeff Zapp Show. I am honored, as I mentioned earlier. It's great, and I couldn't remember. Has it been? It's been maybe more than a couple years. I started in 2018 full time. I know you've been in voiceovers longer than me.
Yeah, that's
But
a
we were
good
both
question.
in Bill DeWeese's class, right?
Yeah, that's where we met. So that was year and a half, 2 years.
Maybe longer than that. Probably 2019, 2020, I think was
that's
just
right.
amazing. Well,
Yeah,
you know
'cause I
what? It was
joined in-
before it was I'm sorry, it was before the pandemic. So that's been 2 years.
Holy Toledo.
Yeah.
Time
It may
flies when you're going through a pandemic, I guess, eh?
Well, when you have time like yourself as a young man, and I meant what I said, and if any of our listeners out there, I'm gonna give a plug for you because listen, he is a great voice talent, and it's not an easy industry to be in. But if you need I'm gonna let you just talk and I'll shut up. I'm gonna let you give yourself an own plug. If you need any content creation, specifically not only for voice acting, but I know you do a variety of things. So I'll shut up. Welcome to the program. How can they get a hold of you?
Oh, thanks, Jeff. Awesome intro. Yeah, so brandonmccaskill.com, that's my website. I showcase all my voiceover work, all my the demos that I've put together, and some jobs that I've done. So yeah, brandonmccaskill.com. You can actually, I give my email out to, especially on my YouTube channel, because well, part of my mission on my channel is to activate people and to motivate people to get out and do things. So I've given people my personal email, and you can, if you have any questions or if you want to send me links, people send me links all the time. I mean, I am so well informed because of my audience, which is just so fantastic. They send me the different things that they come across. And that email is Brandon McCaskill, the letters VO@gmail.com. And yeah, like Jeff mentioned, I've been doing voiceover. I was working in the trades for I had to been in I want to say 8 to 10 years before I started doing voiceover, and my bones started aching, and I realized I was reaching my 30s pretty soon. So I was like, I think I want a career change. Just looking at my employers, they're like only 40 years old, but they're like holding their back as they're crawling out of their vehicles. I'm like, is that the future I want? No. So I jumped ship, not instantly. It was like Jeff said, it's enjoyable. I really enjoy the work, but it is pretty difficult learning the ropes, especially if you're not familiar with the different aspects of like marketing. And you see me behind me is I use a professional booth, and this is something I learned and built myself from the advice of people better than me. So it took some time to really harness where I'm at in life in my career, but I'm finally here. I enjoy what I do, and I'm doing that and a YouTube channel as well. And that just started this winter. It's an old channel, but it kind of took off during the trucker convoy, which I'm sure we'll get into.
We are going to get into that. So as a broadcaster myself, now it's funny because we are in the same class, and Bill DeWeese, if anyone is out there listening that wants to get some great advice on how to get into voice acting, Bill DeWeese himself has done an outstanding job. He's talk about a business. That man has built an empire.
Yeah.
So Bill Deweese, Dewees, check him out, and I think he's got, I don't know, thousands of YouTube videos out there. The guy is just amazing, and I've met with him multiple times here. He comes down. He's got a place down on Hilton Head,
Oh, yeah?
and anyway, bottom line, go check out Bill Deweese if you're interested in getting into voice acting. But let me tell you, it is a very, very challenging career, and it's just not reading off a paper, that what we call copy or script, as you well know, Brandon.
Yeah.
So, hey,
Yep.
listen, let's just dive right into it. I've got a slew of things here, but I want to make sure that people understand this is not scripted. This is an open dialogue. We call it Open Dialogue Thursday, but I'm grateful that you're on the program so we can kind of dive into some of these pressing issues and these matters that each of our countries are faced with right now. And
Yeah.
specifically, when I wanted to give an opportunity today, because I believe today is an election day for your province, is it not?
Yep. So the polls close at 9 o'clock tonight. So we got
Okay.
2 more hours, 15
So
minutes later.
why don't we dive
Uh,
in a little bit, because I think it's a great place to park just a little bit, and let's
For sure.
spend the first few minutes of the program tonight talking about, because elections, rigged elections, fake elections, all of this nonsense, and let's get a little bit of understanding of what's going on in your country, because we've got primaries that have been occurring here in the United States.
Yeah.
And so right now, why don't you talk a little bit, because there might be some people, I know a majority of us, I was reading a book last night, and I've read the Constitution probably 5 times over the course of the past few weeks.
Yeah.
And the thing is, many of us have just been, kind of asleep at the wheel here in the United States. I don't know about Canada, but
Yeah.
more of us need a civics lesson. So can you talk a little bit about the government in Canada, how it's at a national level to the provincial level and even locally where you live, which,
Right.
by the way, if you're wondering where Brandon is, why don't you tell them kind of where you are in relation to that very monstrous nation of yours,
Yeah.
Canada?
Yeah. So let's see if we can do this. I guess it's this hand. Michigan's here. The
Yeah.
thumb. I'm right across the thumb in Ontario, southern, southwestern Ontario, I guess. So we're about 45 minutes west of London. That's a more popular city. And yeah, so like you said, tonight is the provincial election. So we'll be voting to either keep in or remove Doug Ford. He's the premier of Ontario.
Okay.
And so that's the provincial level. That's just a step below federal. And who I'm looking to remove in my own local area is a man named Bob Bailey. He's been serving since 2007. And frankly, my problem is with both of them. They're conservatives. That's not the problem, by the way. My problem with them is that just the lack of upholding our Constitution, which is the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And I'm kind of excited to share with your audience about it because I don't think too many Americans know about our Constitution or what's in it. So
No.
yeah,
And in fact,
yeah,
I wanted to interject because I am always quick to point out I am not afraid to apologize with someone I make a mistake or an error. And I told you yesterday in our kind of a pre-show chat,
yeah,
I really hadn't taken the time to investigate because I was wondering about this Trudeau character
mm,
we can talk about, but I wasn't really sure how the government functioned in your nation. So maybe you could,
right.
again, kind of dovetail into what's going on with the elections, please.
You kind of cut out there the last 10 seconds. Could you say that again?
Oh, yeah. I said, when we did our pre-chat discussion yesterday, I was not afraid to admit that I didn't really understand or appreciate the politics and how the government functions in Canada. Would you mind please kind of sharing for the audience, especially those that are listening tonight here in the United States, that maybe have never studied or spent the time understanding how Canada works as a government?
Right. So instead of, well, you guys have a White House. Ours is the Parliament. You'll see the famous pictures of the buildings in Ottawa. And there's 14 parliaments. So there's the 13 that represent the 3 territories and the 10 provinces, and then obviously the capital parliament. So what happens is we have what we call the House and the Senate. Now I know you guys have senators as well. Do you guys have a House? Is it called House over there?
Yeah, so our 3 branches of government, we have
Right.
within the legislative branch, we have the House of Representatives, the People's House, what they call it. This is the federal level, and
Right.
then we have the Senate. So
Gotcha.
the House is where the insurrection where it took place. So the
Right.
Capitol houses, it's the bicameral legislature. So the Senate and the House of Representatives.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, we got the Senate, the House, and everything has to go through those two in order to be passed. And so that's the federal level. Um, it's similar, but just a step down, and we start calling it provincial level governments. And it just has different names as it gets lower and lower. Like, for example, the Bob Bailey that I mentioned that I'm trying to get out locally, he's called the MPP. So that's the Member of Provincial Parliament. And then I also have in my city, her name's Marilyn Gladue, and she's the MP, Member of Parliament. So she's the member of the top parliament in our capital. So she represents the voice of the people in that way, which I'll get into as we get going here. But a big problem with how the pandemic was handled over the past two years.
Right.
The MPs weren't invited to the table when it came to discussing how to do this, and that's in our Constitution. It's supposed to happen. So that's one of the big issues that I'll be kind of centering in on tonight.
Okay. Well, one other question, here locally, so in the towns and the cities, we have typically elected position would be like a mayor, a city council, then a county council, which is a little bit larger geographical region. Do you have
Yep.
similar government functions locally?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. Yeah, we
Okay.
got city council. They handle the municipal side of things, and yep, mayor. He's
Okay.
been our mayor for the last, I think, 36 years, I want to say. He's been there
Now,
for a while.
in terms of the political structure, here we have a uniparty, and I'm really not being facetious there. We have a uniparty. We'll get into this because I wanted to talk about the Hegelian dialectic principle tonight.
Yeah.
And so we've been told that it's a quote two-party, the Democrat and the Republican Party. There are
Yeah.
other parties, the Green Party, Libertarian, so on and so forth, independent.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders, of course,
Yeah.
whatever that is. But essentially, what we have here is what I call the cabal party. It's a one-party system. So typically, they're private parties, private entities.
Hmm.
But what we find is it doesn't really matter what party affiliation you are, because once they get into office, it seems like they really don't care about we the people anyways. They just do whatever they want. How about in your country, in Canada? What's the political spectrum that you have there?
Yeah, so pretty similar. We got the conservatives and the liberals, green parties. The popular ones are obviously conservative, liberal, and I would say the one that's gaining more and more traction is the Populist Party. That's the
Okay.
PPC. They have provincial representation as well. Just recently, I think it was just this year that they just started it, and it's called PPO. Now, technically, they're not affiliated. It's called PPO, and then the big guys are PPC, but it's made up of the same people, same colors.
Too many acronyms for me, man.
Yeah, it is.
Don't you have the
Um,
Ultra MAGA Party there?
the what?
The Ultra MAGA Party, don't you have that?
I would, if you're talking about Make America Great Again, folks, I would definitely label the PPC as those folks.
Yeah,
And
I was joking around a little bit, but then I started thinking he might be wondering what the heck, it was just MAGA. Now
yeah,
it's morphed into this Ultra MAGA.
well, yeah, well, I don't know if you know Maxime Bernier. He's the federal rep for the PPC. He's
Yeah.
been on the news for being politically incorrect, and that's what kind of sparked my interest in him, because it was around the Trump era, and
Right.
the media started smearing him, and right away I was just like, I like this guy because they're smearing him because he must be saying something right. So that's kind of
Well, so
where I
let
started
let
looking
me
into
ask
it.
you another question, really kind of falling back, because like I said here, I live in South Carolina. So for those Canadian viewers tonight or listeners, you're wondering, okay, South Carolina, it's that southeastern part of the United States, but we have two senators that you might be familiar with, especially one. His name's Lindsey Graham.
Yep.
And, I've had a chance to meet with him. My wife and I have been involved in politics for many years. I especially, but we had a nonprofit. And so we
Mhm.
activism and stuff like that. And we met him, and And he was going up against a real progressive liberal, Jamie Harrison, and you know, this establishment rhino. We call them the rhinos, right? Republican in name only. He
Yeah.
says a lot of good things, but he never really does anything, right? He just stays up there in office. And we've got Tim
Same here,
Scott,
man.
which is supposed to be conservative, but
Yeah.
he really hasn't done much anything anyhow. So I'm wondering, do you have that within your quote conservative party? Do you have same types of, sheep, wolves in sheep's clothing, I call them?
Yeah, they're chocked full of them. And I mean, everybody has their different opinions, and, it seems if from on the outside looking in, it looks like people that think like me are divided because not only do we have conservatives and the PPC, but now on this provincial level, we actually have a three-party split, which is the Ontario Party, we
Okay.
have the PPO, and the New Blue Party. So it just seems like this mess of, the same people.
What's the
But
blue? New blue, or it's blue, but
yeah.
it's new.
The New Blue Party, and I believe that was birthed out of the trucker convoy, people that, were in support of it and are obviously trying to stand up for the Charter of Rights, and same with the Ontario Party, and to be honest with you, I look at all the top players in each of these parties, I love what all of them have to say, but then I start looking out through the different levels,
Hmm.
I see to be honest with you, the PPO, the one that I'm gonna be I did vote for, and I'll see the results of tonight. They're the only party that seem to have an interest in not electing politicians. They wanna put real Canadian citizens in office, and they're the only party that I've seen that, and that's what attracted me to them. Um 'Cause in my opinion, you can't fix broken politics with more politicians. If you're in it for a career and not for the people,
Right.
it's a hard thing to trust you.
Well, it's really difficult to try to fix. I don't know if I was talking to you about this or somebody else, but it seems like we're being pushed for farther and farther into a corner. You know,
Mhm.
I, um, I'm always concerned about. Well, we saw 2 years ago here in the United States, they called it the Summer of Love after the George Floyd incident, and of course, Blantifa, I call them BLM and Antifa. They're paid agitators and terrorists. Basically, that's what they are, and they're the ones that
Yeah.
were mostly peaceful protesting. But they're trying to push and I use the term patriots, and I wanna come back to that comment because I saw on Facebook that gentleman that was having a conversation over you over a word that's like, "Okay, dude, flip out your Webster dictionary and find out what patriot means." Anyway, I think maybe he was smoking too much ganja or something. At the end of
Probably.
the I think what, needs to happen is recognizing that this, Hegelian dialectic principle that we're gonna talk about here shortly is they're trying to push us into a, quote, civil war, because then they can,
Mhm,
rush in and take over after a color revolution. But
mhm,
ultimately, a revolution is the proper term because we need revolutionary change to occur. If these institutions that have now they're benefiting from the very laws and the selections here in the United States as we see more and more evidence of a fraudulent electoral system here in the United States and possibly abroad, which
mhm,
probably was aided and abetted by some of the security agencies in the federal government, by the way. We've propped up and tore down countries across the world. We've been the police force for many, many decades. And now
mhm,
all of a sudden, we're starting to see the gun grab and other destruction of our civil liberties and our constitutional rights, which we're seeing as well from as far as of New Zealand and Australia and just to a northern border with your tyrannical Trudeau, who decided that he wants to grab the guns now as well. And then today, in a bunch of hearings, it was nonsensical. I mean, the heated rhetoric and the nonsense that continues to come out, and they promulgate this message that we've got to point the finger at an inanimate object. God forbid we hold an actual person accountable that commits these crimes.
yeah,
But that's what they're saying here. And so we do need a revolutionary change globally, which
mhm.
we're going to get into, I think, here in a few minutes. But if you wouldn't mind discussing your journey, Brandon, how you got into this, because what you said, the trucker convoy, as a
Mhm.
follower of Christ, I know myself, I just got to the point where I'm just so the information warfare, this psychological operation that we're in,
Yeah.
we are bombarded 24/7, 365, and especially the younger generation like yourself. I didn't grow up like this.
Mhm.
I didn't jump on Facebook until in the late 2000s, and I still don't like social media, but we have to use it in our career.
Yeah.
And now it's like, how do we start, having a dialogue? I say in the public square on my show, that's why I started this.
Yeah.
But how did you decide to get into it and decide that, hey, you know what? The heck with it. I'm going full throttle here, and this is what I want to cover, and this is the format in which I'm going to do that. So could you explain
Right.
that journey for us, please, and the listeners?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'll rewind back to even before the pandemic began. So we had the Trump era. I was paying so close attention to what was happening with you guys in the States, and I saw how the media twisted things. I I knew American politics better than a lot of Americans, I feel.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot just watching you guys. And then 2019 came. I had my firstborn son, who was he was born with a liver disease, and we went through a lot of medical complications, which kind of ended up putting us in a position where, well, he's immunocompromised, so we can't go out of the house. We can't, bring things into the house that haven't been wiped down. So we leave them outside. We wipe things down. We're living super carefully. And this is before COVID. So COVID it starts showing up in the news. It starts penetrating everybody else's life and telling everybody else that they need to isolate and living the way that we were living. So it was kind of weird and ironic to see that it seemed the world was following in our footsteps. But as things started to progress, we started to hear about the emergency authorization to push through these vaccines. And I was, to be honest with you, I was like, great, like, this is awesome. This is what happens when pandemics come through or any kind of disease. We come out with a vaccine. And, I was all for Trump, and he was saying, we're going to get this done in record time. I was like, awesome. Like, kudos to
Right.
him. And so that was my attitude. I didn't see any need for controversy. And it's funny to see all the Democrats, because at first they were saying, we're not going to take anything that Donald Trump makes, right? But now all of a sudden they're the ones treating you badly for not getting it. So I guess it was, I can't remember how many months into the pandemic we were, but it's when I started hearing about what the goal of these vaccines was, which was to minimize symptoms, right? To keep our ICUs from overflowing. By the way, our local ICU has 13 beds for a population of 90,000 people. That's just a side note. But when I started hearing that it minimizes your symptoms, my first thought was, I'm trying to defend my son, protect him from all these things. Why in the world would I want to minimize my symptoms to the point where I'm asymptomatic and I could give him a kiss, not knowing that I have it, and potentially harm him? So
Right.
I had made the decision with my wife to not get vaccinated. And again, we were for the vaccine. We were happy for people who wanted to get it if it was their best choice. But then I started getting the comments on social media. Brandon, you're selfish. You're putting your son's life at risk. How dare
You're
you think
killing
this way?
people, Brandon. You're killing people.
You're killing grandma and you're killing your son.
Yeah.
It
You're
wasn't
selfish.
those exact words, but it was that mentality. And that's when I woke up. I was like, all right, there's going to be a bit of a fight on our hands, even locally. And man, the division, I don't know how you experienced it in your local community, especially the Facebook world. It was very black and white. Yeah. And so that was when I really dug into the research and to really, look into why these people are so gung-ho. Like, am I being selfish? Like, did I make the wrong decision? But then I started to realize, no, I mean, my decision made sense. And then I started looking into the science. And I guess we could talk forever about the other solutions to COVID, right? The alternative treatments, but which our government isn't, well, I know Canada isn't, they're not allowing alternative treatments because it
And don't
cuts into their
again, as I
back
mentioned
pocket.
yesterday, sorry to cut you off, but I want to make sure our listeners and viewers, because I am not ashamed to speak the truth. So I've gotten banned before off of certain platforms. I am not afraid to speak the truth. I think it was Dr. Scott Martin that I had on one time, and I'll just say it: natural immunity and or some of the medications that Trump
Mhm.
said early on,
Yeah.
and so that was the immediate, kibosh on that. And of course, the mainstream media, the legacy media came out in full force against us. And of course,
Yeah.
now, almost 2 years, and now we know the real truth, right? The
Yeah.
inventor of the PCR test, Kerry Mullis, we know that was never developed for it being able to identify a SARS-CoV-2 virus. It
Yep.
just not there. And you know how Kerry felt about crazy Anthony Fauci and others. So we don't have to go down that route. But at the end of the day, this is this menticide, this sheepish mentality that most people, it has nothing to do with politics. It has what you did, and I commend you because you have to stand your ground for your family, for your son, to do what's right. And that's what I'm trying to get at here at the end of the day. What happened to our critical thinking skills?
Good question. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I kind of go. It's funny because I was thinking about this all today. Where did it all start for me? And um, I mean, even I have a big family, and I was the only one that wasn't vaccinated. So I never got in arguments. My brothers and I aren't the type to argue, but it did create awkward tension where it was just like, I don't know where they're at. It's like, I know there's so many people who feel that, like, because we go through our family events, we sit down for Thanksgiving, and if you have a completely different view, it's like you can't connect with your own family anymore. That's how bad it was getting. It was family against family, and sometimes even spouse against spouse, and it was ruining some kids' lives that I heard, through custody battles, and it was messy. But, so going through all that, and again, I don't wanna go down too far the COVID trail and what I think about it, but,
So this is all happening kind of just to bring everyone back to the general reset or the start here. This is what you're experiencing. The COVID starts about the push for the vaccine, and specifically in Canada, then all of a sudden these crazy lockdowns and all this stuff. So what
yeah.
do you decide? Brandon McCaskill, what do you decide to do about it?
About the lockdowns?
Well, yeah, everything that's happening for you to launch into starting to be a little more of an advocate,
Yeah,
an ambassador for others to stand up and to speak the truth, even when we're under fire.
yeah. Well, when I started seeing, um, promises not kept, when I started seeing, well, even earlier on, the red flags, like, you mentioned Trump and how he dealt with when he caught COVID. Do you remember when hydroxychloroquine, the media went nuts, and these elitists quickly dove into this study and disproved hydroxychloroquine? But I'm pretty sure a lot of your viewers won't be aware that that study was retracted and the
It
media
was.
buried it.
Yep.
So he was right. That was a major red flag. And when I mentioned before how watching you guys in the States taught me a lot of lessons. It taught me uh, how to identify the liars from the ones that are telling the truth. Because I knew they were lying the whole Trump era. So why would they be telling me the truth during all this? So that really
Right.
gave me some good insight. You see people like Nancy Pelosi calling Trump racist for shutting down travel to China early on in the pandemic. And Joe Biden, what did he called him a xenophobe.
Yeah.
But it turns out,
Whole
that was
laundry list of dirty names.
yeah. But anyway, I guess I'll kind of fast forward up to this year because that carried on and we went through the ups and downs of lockdowns and mandates, and we saw the inconsistencies there. And during all that, I actually had no idea what was in my charter either. Like, I knew basic fundamental freedoms, but I didn't understand how they were overstepping.
Okay.
And so that's what I'll kind of bring up to speed. So um, most of you know the truckers rolled into Ottawa on January 29th, 2022. And Justin fled for his cottage because he was scared of them. He left for a week, claiming he had COVID, even though he was double vaccinated. And then the party went on. I didn't go to Ottawa because my wife's pregnant. I got a little boy at home. Just didn't work out for me. But I started jumping on my YouTube channel and taking footage that I found from Ottawa, or finding people that were there and interviewing them. And basically, I started this following that just gained more and more momentum. That was lifting these truckers up, and I was one of the ones responsible for telling people to go support them through the GoFundMe. Uh, what do you call that? The fundraiser, which I'm
Mhm.
sure a lot of you heard that it got frozen illegally. Our government, I don't know how they did it, whether they threatened GoFundMe or whatever. By the way, GoFundMe still has open accounts for BLM that actually has.
Yeah, great alternative. I met the owners of Give, Send, Go. I don't know if you're familiar
Yes,
with that organization.
yeah, that was the alternative that they switched to after they got froze.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I did follow that, and, I was watching, here with the kind of the trucker convoy, but in Canada, things got
Mhm.
pretty dicey up there. So
Yeah,
let's kind of dive into that for us a little bit. You know what? You said you had some folks on the ground sending you some video and providing some witness
yeah.
testimony,
Well,
eyewitness
actually,
testimony.
yeah. So my kind of launch into the YouTube space was after a video I did, because Justin Trudeau fled when he saw the truckers coming, and he was doing press conferences from his backyard door at his cottage, and that's when he said the famous phrase, "small fringe minority." So
Right.
I did a commentary video on that, just with him on the screen and my screen a little bit smaller, and I went viral overnight. I had almost 200,000 views and 9,000 subscribers overnight, and then it eventually grew to, I'm at 13,000 now. So there was definitely a lot of online chatter, a lot online support in regards to like algorithm stuff, because like YouTube was just pushing my stuff, which is I
Yeah.
thought was weird. But I can't
Hey,
remember your question. Did you
could
ask
you
me a
send me
question?
those, algorithms so I could I'm just kidding, I really don't care, but that's amazing, 200,000 views, that's incredible,
Yeah.
and then now all of a sudden, like you said, you're trying to do some little bit of investigative journalism / what's happening on the streets and reporting to convey the
Mhm.
message that's going on, so how does this kinda start to, get some legs and move on from there?
Yeah. So yeah, there's so much to the story, because I'll kind of share with you what happened in Ottawa. So Trudeau left, and basically left it in the hands of the Ottawa police. But he was giving orders from afar. And we had the tyrant police chief, Peter Slowly. He was doing anything he could to remove these truckers. Um, they tried every bylaw violation, so they were writing tickets, but the truckers were just like, "I'll pay it. Just give me the ticket," and they didn't move. So they're just like scratching heads trying to figure out how to get rid of these truckers. Meanwhile, the the media is dancing around them, trying to paint them in a bad light, saying they were stealing food from a homeless shelter, which turned out to be false. Every story that they tried to twist turned out to be false. They even staged a Confederate flag guy with a full face mask walking through the crowd with his head down. Uh,
Wow.
Justin Trudeau's personal photographer was spotted taking pictures of this guy. Um, and it's just funny because and this is what we're good at on our side of things, which I would call the populist movement, is that we're peaceful. We do
Right.
things peacefully, and we don't give them anything to hang us with. And speaking of that, I want to tell you a story. During all this, and even months before, there was this YouTube channel comedy. There was 4 guys, they made goofy videos, and, they would film themselves out, like, swinging rubber swords at each other, and they were this pretend terrorist group called
Right.
Diagolon, and Justin Trudeau and his government found these videos, and I kid you not, they use the name Diagolon in the House and the Senate of our Canadian government to justify evoking the Emergencies Act, which gave them more tools
Yeah.
to use pretty close to lethal action against peaceful, law-abiding citizens, and that's how it went down in Ottawa, and that's how they were able to. I mean, they were tear gassing
Yeah.
people, shooting rubber bullets. They were pushing our veterans down and beating them. I know a guy personally. He's got chronic pain because he was blown up with his friends in 2008, so he's in bad shape. And
Yep.
and the police knew that. He introduced himself to them. He said, I'm a veteran and I've served in Afghanistan." And 15 minutes later, he was on the ground. They were kicking him in the stomach, and he actually lost one of his medals while he was there. But this is and one of the interesting things he says. His name is Chris Deering, and I think you can check him out. He's on YouTube.
Okay.
One of the things he says is, he's like, "I knew they were going to do that to me." He said, "I wanted to go to Ottawa to show you that if they're willing to do this to me, they're going to do that to you." And that's what Justin Trudeau thinks of his citizens. And yeah, so that with that type
Dictator.
of yeah, with that, and he likes to parrot that the illegal blockades, right? You hear about that, how they clogged up the borders. But Jeff, did you know that the truckers, in every instance, the 4 borders that they blocked, not one of them were blockaded. They left emergency lanes open, and it was the police's decision to close the borders. Not to mention the Windsor Bridge, the Ambassador Bridge between Detroit and Windsor. There's a tunnel that goes underneath that bridge. Why wasn't
Right.
traffic rerouted under there? There's 118 borders in Canada. Did you know that? There's 118 borders that connect you and I.
I didn't know that. Again, just kind of, this is the reason why I wanted to have you on tonight. It's interesting. And someone just posted, I think Jeff McCoy posted,
Oh,
thank
that's
you
my
for
boy
doing
Jeff. There he is.
one of the things that I wanted to have you on and see, I want every listener to hear this. Listen really closely. This isn't about you said national populace, but most of these countries, whether they're communist or socialist or republic or democracy, democracy, Democrats like to use that, preserve democracy.
Yeah.
For the most part, the people themselves are not the enemies. And we're hoping to dive into this topic next with regard to how they build this up.
Mhm.
These globalists, these elites, the cabal, whatever you would like to call them.
Yep.
And they create these situations. And so you get someone like a Trudeau or a feckless old dude that we've got up there playing resident, all them.
Yeah.
And these are the types of people that they select. They're evil as hell.
Yeah.
Truly evil as hell. When you have a national populist movement like the MAGA movement here or in Canada or abroad, in Australia, I've got brothers in Australia,
Yep.
mates that were under horrific mandates and restrictions during this China virus nonsense.
Yeah.
And which I said from the very beginning. I told my wife, and as soon as we started hearing the rumblings, I said, this is nothing more than a freaking bioweapon.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I told you that or not, but I hate to say that I was right, but with my background in the military and as an aerospace engineer, one of the things that I love to do is be able to research and investigate all these different things.
Yeah.
So I knew that something wasn't quite right, but I was always having the difficulty because I figured in our country, it seems like nothing ever gets done up on the hill. I mean up in Washington, D.C., the swamp.
Yeah.
So why is it? I mean, it seems like it continues to kick the can down the road to perpetuate this bunch of nonsense. Where do these people? And so, like you said, what happens where we're not being fed information? So we didn't know about the borders, that there were still lanes open in those four checkpoints, if you will, from Canada to the United States. But, they always create a narrative to make it look like we're a bunch of wackadoodles that were I'm a conspiracy theorist or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing is I wanted to have you on the show because at the end of the day, we're all created in the image of God. I don't care if you're a person that practices a lifestyle that I may not agree with, okay?
Yeah.
Or I believe is wrong because I don't say it's not my opinion, it's because God says it's wrong.
Hmm.
So that's the thing. Governments are instituted among men, and the morality, which is very important today, people forget, and that's what's happened here in the United States. We'll talk about Canada next, but here
Yeah.
in the United States, we want to have this virtue signaling
Hmm.
where it's incomprehensible about these children being killed in these schools, but yet on the flip side, we can talk about transvestites, going in into basically a library to read to these young children. We can talk about Roe versus Wade and the millions of babies that have been killed in utero. I
Yep.
mean, it's always this virtue, if I can speak tonight, signaling that
Yeah.
it's fine to be one thing, but the other is not. And so, but the morality comes from God alone. And
Mm.
that's where our English laws and our system of justice here in the United States, our republic, comes from. Our
Yep.
foundational document, the supreme law of the land, is the Constitution of the United States.
Yep.
Within it, we have the 10 Bill of Rights. It's like the 10 Commandments. And the first two are very critical because the first one is our freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, right? The second one helps support the first one. And now we've got these numbskulls that are running around in the halls of Congress saying that we absolutely have to pass something and we will get something passed. And I look to our north and I see somebody like a gutless, turdless Trudeau, who is nothing more than a propped up mannequin who is giving his talking points. Okay.
Yep.
The same thing with the feckless old dude who's walking around. I don't know who's playing Joe Biden. Okay. And that's no conspiracy theorist, but the dude's got something up with him. And
Yeah.
whoever is injecting him with whatever he's got going to keep him moving, kind of like the Energizer Bunny, when his
Yeah.
battery runs out. I don't know where these people, it's like illegitimate because we know for a fact that we, the people, the law-abiding citizens of whether it's Canada, the United States,
Yeah.
Mexico, and abroad,
Yeah.
we're not the problem, okay? But it's been created over many decades,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, it's taken the last 2 years for people like yourself and me, and others to finally go, man, something doesn't seem quite right here, and I
Yeah.
guess I'm going to use my vocal cords and finally stand up
Yeah.
and start using my voice, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you've done, and I commend you on it. And I know that I catch a lot of flack, but guess what? At this point, I don't think there's any way we can go back. We've got to keep pressing forward.
Yeah.
Humanity rests on our decision for good men and women to do what's right.
Yeah.
To do right.
Yeah, that's good because I hear too often people in my own country say that we need to scrap the government, what we have, whatever
Yeah.
structures we have, tear them down. But the reality is we have a good structure, but you have to enforce these good structures, right? Like right now, our courts, especially our lower courts, our provincial courts, they'll rule on public opinion rather than our Constitution. That's not right. They shouldn't be looking at public opinion. But what that tells me is that we need to get out and engage the conversation to change the public opinion, right? And when we can do that, when we can come from a grassroots perspective and just keep rallying people, and that's why it's so important, I feel, to keep things civil. Like, it's so tempting, especially on social media, because you don't have to show your face. It's so tempting to just be on there to stroke your ego. But we have to engage the conversation because there's people just inches away from waking up. And I'm
Yep.
seeing it all the time. People that are double jabbed, people that voted for Justin Trudeau, but they're starting to realize the normal that they were promised isn't coming back. There's so many people that are on the fence.
I'm sorry to interject here.
No, it's
And I
okay.
think that's really critical because you talked about this earlier about families being divided, saying, I
Yeah.
got the jab, but you're being selfish, Brandon. Why don't you get this? Um, and it's been easy for us to do now because of the advent of technology as such that we have ubiquity in terms of, like I said, social media,
Mhm.
that construct that I think was created specifically with a purpose and an agenda in mind to gather
Mm.
intelligence and information and tracking purposes for certain agencies to institute basically or usher in a new world government.
Yeah.
Take that in mind, and now people are freely giving their information out, and they're taking pictures of their latest meal and showing their vacation pictures and all that. But that's an ability, a way to capture a tremendous amount of data, right?
Mhm.
And to be able to catalog it and have algorithms to be able to cater to your specific needs, right? And artificial intelligence, as we know, I think Elon Musk talked this transhumanism, this evolution into this next progress phase of mankind, which I think is, you know, we know from the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab said by the year 2030, you will own nothing and be happy because that's where they want to go to. They want to depopulate.
Yeah.
Okay, they're eugenicists. This Bill Gates decides that one day he's this founder of Microsoft and this expert in software production, and now, of course, he's an expert in vaccines through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's just a bunch of hogwash, and I love that what we're doing is we're having dialogue because, again, at the end of the day, we're not trying to back us into corners and hurl insults and sling mud at one another because when we do that, we just soil our own hands. We
Yeah.
need to start having meaningful, I say, loving dialogue
Mhm.
with someone. This isn't road rage out here. I'm not trying to shoot you because you cut me off at the last stop sign.
Yeah.
Let's start talking about who really is the enemy here,
Yeah.
which kind of talks what I wanted to do is put up on the screen here, and then I'm gonna let you talk again. When you got two voice actors that do a lot of different narration, it's hard to
Yeah.
folks, if you're listening tonight, you can give us a call right now. The studio line is open. It's 1-843 here in the United States, 1-843-305-3075, 843-305-3075 is the call-in number here at the Jeff Zapp Show. And as well as thank you for all of the wonderful folks that are already providing some context with regard to the comments. Jeff McCoy has posted already. And then on the Rumble Rants, we have Flower Friend and Veracity Phantom. Thank you so much for the comments and for watching tonight as well. So go ahead, Brandon.
Awesome. Yeah. So where do we go from here?
Okay. Did I steal your thunder? What we were talking about? So we had,
So
we've kind of
much.
already we've already talked about a little bit when terms of kind of tyranny, because I was talking about Trudeau, but
Yeah.
I think this is a great segue into what we have discussed a little bit in terms of I'm reading a book right now, one of the books. I don't know if you ever heard about this. It's by Anthony Sutton. It's basically about secret societies, and specifically this focuses on the Skull and Bones the Order 322. Are you familiar with the Yale Secret Society?
No.
Okay.
No,
So
sir.
it's Antony. It's Antony. His last name is Sutton, Sutton.
Okay.
And if I had my web browser up, I could probably bring it up here, but I'll just quickly tell it. Essentially, here in the United States, it should be of no surprise that folks like John Kerry and George W. Bush and his father and grandfather were all in the Order. This isn't conspiracy theories, folks. Again, there are no coincidences. All these people were in or a member of or have been a member of this secret society or this order. Bohemian Grove. I'm not trying to go Alex Jones on you, but listen, these are all real entities that function and operate. And as I've stated on my program before, Tuesday I said captured operations, which means here in the United States, if you're not yet awake or you're just starting to wake up from the slumber, because the past 2 years have been a living hell, here's where I want to kind of go with this. This Hegelian dialectic principle is talked about by Anthony Sutton in his book.
Hmm.
And I think it's interesting because this deep state cabal, you know, The principle is this: they have what's called thesis, an antithesis or antithesis, and then the synergy. And I'm going to use the pandemic as an example. If you haven't heard of Event 201, I just encourage you to go do a web search for Event 201 and do the research on your own, and then you can connect the dots as to whether or not that the quote pandemic came out of a because as a result of the bat down in Wuhan, the Wuhan lab, right? The Wuhan Institute of Virology. If you believe that nonsense, I've got some land to sell you down in the Everglades here in the United States. Okay. The problem is these people have been doing this, leveraging the Hegelian dialectic process for over the last 100 plus years. At the turn of the Industrial Revolution and in the turn of the 20th century, which many people don't realize, the 20th century was the bloodiest century in the history of the world. The history of the world. And they've used this to play both sides of the equation. The capitalists, the Wall Street bankers were the ones propping up the Nazis. Did you guys know that? Sure was. They were the ones funding that. Why? Because anytime you really want to find out what's going on, as my friend Lynn Wood says, you want to connect the dots, follow the money. When you follow the money, that's when you start to get to these secret societies. And I'm not going to go too deep into all this because people will go, oh my goodness, this guy's crazy. No, it is going to scare you initially because you're going to be suffering from what's referred to as cognitive dissonance. You're going to push back. And you're going to say, no way does that happen, especially as it relates to the significant issue that we're facing on a global pandemic is child and sex trafficking. That's what's really going on. This trafficking that happens in addition to the running the guns and the drugs, which really pays for all this, it's been happening and has been co-conspirated by nation states, governments like the federal government of the United States, the CIA, which George H.W. Herbert Walker Bush, a member of the order, he was the one. Who do you think decided to get the Clintons working in Arkansas? It was the Bush family. All right. Where do you think Barack Hussein Obama came from? Don't you find it odd if you've ever looked at pictures how from W to Barack Hussein Obama and the other Bushes and the Clintons they're all like buddy. Have you ever noticed that? So this Hegelian dialectic process is what I wanted to kind of dive into because thesis, antithesis, synergy, they use it over and over again. They used it in the pandemic. They said, oh my goodness, we got to lock everything down. And they wanted to see how the average citizen would respond to a quote pandemic. And guess what? A majority of the people sheepishly just walked right into the oven. And it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And boy, that changed here in the United States rather quickly, did it not?
Yeah.
So how are you dealing with this when you recognize that the vice, it's starting to get, it's like coming closer and it's starting to tighten up, and we're seeing it, whether that was in Australia, we saw some of the nonsense there, or even in your own country. How do we deal with it? And where do we go from here to escape the oligarchy, the tyranny that's coming to each and every one of us if we're not careful?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say stay within your laws. Don't step outside the laws, because the very moment you do, it's going to be another insurrection, right? And they're looking for that. In fact, they're so desperate to find that in you that they'll create it so that it does exist, because most times I believe it doesn't exist, especially with what I see going on in here in Canada. So there's a few things I would say. Act within the law, exhaust every avenue. I mean, I'll just give you an example. And so many Canadians, and I mentioned earlier myself, I wasn't aware what's in the Constitution. Can I actually show you? Is there a way for me to share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely. You should be able to share your screen. Down at the bottom, there's a little icon that says share.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
You can select. There you go.
Can you see this?
Yeah, I'm going to show it right now. There you go.
Awesome. All right. So this is the Canadian Charter of Rights. Okay, so this is our Constitution. You can see here it was enacted in 1982. So
Mhm.
first of all, think of this. You correct me if I'm wrong, but the United States Bill of Rights was enacted in 1791. Is that correct?
Uh, 1982? Is that when it enacted 1982?
Yeah, this is the Canadian, but what I was asking is for the United States, like your guys' Bill of Rights, like you were established in 1776, correct?
Yeah, 1779, I believe.
Okay. And
Yeah.
your Bill of Rights was enacted in
2, I
17
think 1782, right around there. Yep,
1782?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So think about this. You guys have had hundreds of years to iron out the details and the bumps along the way
Right.
to really get a feel of it. Our Charter of Rights is a baby. 1982, our Queen signed over because we did have a Bill of Rights, but it favored the federal level more than the provincial, so there was a lot of problems with it. Um, so we have this new Constitution, and it's actually pretty big. It's 16 pages long. Um, But all I share with people, and this is what I do every time I come down to
Okay.
our city hall, we show up. We have little rallies where we just show each other support, and we engage conversation. And I show them this section. This is section 1. You can see the highlighted part here in purple. And essentially, this section here, section 1, was put in here. It had to be put in here in case of an emergency. If there was like a war or an insurrection of sorts, they
Okay.
had to give the government something so that they could act quickly, so that they could, temporarily override people's rights. So this is what it says. It says the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it, subject only to such reasonable limits. So just remember that reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. Now let's just take this one for example, demonstrably justify. This is a huge problem our government didn't do. They didn't demonstrably justify this because it's a less than 1% fatality rate. Certainly no comparison of a war or insurrection. They didn't create any new laws through parliament. They used existing laws when they were supposed to create new ones. They didn't set reasonable limits because our lockdowns and mandates it changed like the weather. Nobody knew what to expect. Nothing was set. But let's say they did pass those things. The big sinker here is the free and democratic society. That means all this had to be done through the parliament. And I mentioned this before with our MPs. Our MPs they're the voice of the people. That's what our votes go to. Our MPs take our opinions when we call them up and say, "Hey, listen, we want you to vote on this in the House of Commons." They go to the
Yeah.
House of Commons and they discuss. They discuss what's reasonable. They discuss the new laws that they're going to enact. They discuss what's demonstrably justified, but none of that was done, and therefore this entire section was ignored, and there needs to be accountability. That's what I wanted to share with you.
Well, I'm glad that you did share that. And let me turn this off, hide that in the stream. So there we go. We have a caller on the line,
Awesome.
and I want to bring him in. You probably know this person or are familiar with Jeff McCoy.
Yeah, Jeff's a good buddy.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and bring him in, and let's see if we can bring the talk here. Hey, Jeff, you're on the Jeff Zapp Show with Jeff Zapp talking right now, and my good buddy Brandon McCaskill. Welcome.
Huge pleasure. Can you hear me okay, Jeff?
Loud and clear. How about you, Brandon? Can you hear Jeff?
Yeah, I can hear you, buddy. How you doing?
Hey, doing well. Thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Jeff, for taking my call, for sure. When I dialed the number, there was so much conversation that happened after the fact. So, geez, where do I start? First off, the fact that yourself, Jeff, and Brandon from, can connect on different levels and bring information to the people is phenomenal. So, thank you to both of you for that. I think, Jeff, I want to zero in on, I always pronounce this wrong, Hegelian dialect. right?
Yes.
That's kind of your direction of the show today.
Yep.
What are your thoughts? Because early on, I mean, listening to Brandon's story again tonight on how, you know, he kind of got started, and you know, one of the things that stood out for me was the ash conformity experiment.
Okay.
So, Jeff, are you familiar with the ash conformity experiment?
Very little. I mean, I've heard of it before, but I have not studied it. No. So maybe you could not only inform me, but kind of share it with our listeners as well.
Yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure. Let's just say 40 years ago. Okay, so nobody fact check me on that, but there were, you know, 7 people put into a room, and they were all to look at a diagram or a graph with a line with different lengths.
Okay.
And one person was in the shadows, and the rest of them were actors.
Yes. Okay.
So that person in the first experiment, that person all conformed to what the actors were saying, what line was the length, right?
Right.
Are you following me okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% on target with you. I'm dialed in now. I'm familiar with it. I just need a little refresher. You know, I'm almost 52, so my thought processes aren't as sharp as they used to be, kind of like for Brando's age. But yeah, I'm familiar with it now. Right.
So that's one thing that the TSN turning point for myself was, you know, seeing that experiment, because that's what's happening, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, Jeff,
the media, right?
Can I add to that and expand upon it a little bit, if you don't mind?
Oh, please.
So I'm going to give you my 2 cents of this, and this is a Christian worldview. The purpose of my show is to encourage folks in the way. And I don't know if you're a believer or not. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but the way is Jesus Christ, and truth, hope, and freedom is found only in him alone. Jesus said he is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through him, right? So here's the perspective. Governments are instituted amongst men, as I talked about this earlier. If there's no absolute truth, if there's no certainty in the world, then all this is a clown show, okay? We might as well crack the tequila, get drunk as a skunk tonight, and there should be no, you know, because we're just going to be pushing up the tulips tomorrow if we take a last breath tonight. But we know that's not the case. If you walk outside in the evening time, like here in the South, we've got everything from alligators and all these wonderful creations. I look up at the stars and I see all these constellations and the magnificent beauty. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that there's a creator behind everything, that there's an order, that we have laws such as gravity and laws of nature, laws of man. You have a conscience within your heart. If it's not seared, you recognize that when you do something wrong, when you steal a cookie out of the cookie jar, when you're a kid or whatever, when you do something wrong, you have a conscience that tells you something's not right here. Now, some people have a seared conscience. What I'm suggesting is that there is truth and there is absolute reality, that there's not a condition of relativity. Evil itself has been around since the beginning of the creation of time, space continuum. And from a biblical perspective, we know that the father of lies, of all deceit, of all corruption comes from the devil, Satan himself, right? So even within the garden where you had mankind, or the representative created in the image of God, in this case, Adam was created first. Eve was created from the rib of Adam, right? And we see that they had everything, absolutely everything. But you know what? They were tempted and they decided, you know what? Double finger you, God, because we can do it on our own. And this looks pretty appealing, and let's try it out. And so ever since then, we've been this shift or this bent, this brokenness, sin, whatever you would like to label it, the term. We have decided that we're going to do this on our own. And I think over the course of kind of like a copy, we've fallen so far from grace that in a situation of today where there are such bad decisions that I make, I always say I'm just as messed up as the next person. But what we do have is a sense of element of evil. And the evil folks have been able to take advantage because you know what? There really is, like the book of Ecclesiastes says, there's really nothing new under the sun. It just kind of recycled. And so this Hegelian dialectic process that I'm familiar with, because before I came to Christ in my 20s, I thought I was like some superstar. So I studied all the great theologians and philosophers, and I thought I had it figured out. And then one day I woke up and I was about as depressed as I could be because I realized I'm gonna be dead. And for me, I thought that was it. So my point of all this rambling is this. I do believe that what these evil people are doing and have been doing since the beginning of time, whether they were trying to build a pyramid to go into the heavens or what have you, that they have been under the influence of a spiritual battle here that started back in the Garden of Eden and will culminate ultimately in the return of Jesus Christ, like I said, to clean up the mess that's here. Whether you believe it or not doesn't necessarily, it's like the train coming down the track, the locomotive. You can say, there's no train coming. We'll stand on the tracks and wait and see what happens. I personally would probably stand off the tracks and watch it go by. But if I'm not out there speaking the truth as best as I know, and my imperfect, my ability to try to speak the truth as best as I know it, it could be a perception only that maybe this line is a little bit longer than that line. Or it could be that somebody is actually manipulating that perspective for me, which I believe part of the evil in our world today is at such a high level with the technology that exists for what I call the information war, the psychological operation that we've all been under, because most of the methods to disseminate information have been captured by the cabal themselves. I'll just use the term cabal because it's easier. These folks that have collaborated to further an agenda, they have created socialism and communism and constructs to be able to force us into corners, to divide and conquer us, to scare us, to have fear porn. Oh, 2 weeks ago, oh, we got monkey virus. We got this. It's constant. It's nonstop. And it's nothing more. I forget who said that's for evil to flourish is when for good men to do nothing. Was it is that John Locke? Who was that? Anybody remember?
I know the quote, don't know the man.
So those are the types of things that I think in my mind to kind of go with what you said, your example. My belief, there are those that say that they're quote good, or, and I'll use the church, Brandon, you can appreciate this. The church itself, Jesus talks about the wheat and the tares. You don't rip out the whole piece of the plot of land because you're going to take out the wheat and the tares, right? I'm going to allow God, because he's the only one that knows a person's heart. But I do believe, and I'll tie this in here after I give you a chance to chat. I do believe that we have a lot of people that quote are, they look to appear like they're all on the up and up. They could be as corrupt as hell or corrupted or compromised. And I don't necessarily know who all those players are. And I'll use an example as, like I said, Lynn Wood has been saying a lot of things on Telegram as it relates to certain, quote, patriots. And I've actually started to take a step back and say, well, and I shared this with Brandon yesterday. I'm like, wow, I never thought about that, considered that. I'm limited in my ability and my scope to try to wrap my mind around all of this nonsense that's happening. My belief, though, at the end of the day is there is an element of evil, of satanic. These people want to do it because they are under the influence and control of some satanic forces. Last thing I'll say, I always said from the very beginning that if this is just a physical fight, then let's get the guns out and let's go out on the street. And it's kind of let's get into the ring and duke it out. But we all know that there's more to this than just the physical realm. And whether you are a religious person, not saying you, Jeff, but I'm saying listeners, if you believe that this is all there is, go back and listen to some of my earlier shows. We know that there is more to life than just this physical body. We have a spirit or soul, however you want to classify it. And my belief is, again, that we're going through all of this. You can either trust in the one who's the lover of your soul, who's created the time-space continuum and list and which we exist, or you could go throughout this life and think that you're the master of your fate and the captain of your soul, and you can do whatever you want, and there are no repercussions. I say, hey, if that's the person you want to be and stand on that train track as the locomotive's coming at you, go for it. I myself, like I said, I'm going to try to take as many people, get them off the track or get them out of the burning building, because we are headed to a cataclysmic event, I believe, because it has to happen. If it's, Jesus said that every word was true. If it's going to happen, the book of Revelation, that we know at some point is going to. So my take on that, Jeff, is I think there's a lot of crazy stuff that's going on. And even with the discernment of using the Holy Spirit himself, helping us, guide us, we're still going to fall short. Because if we could do it on our own, Jesus would have never had to come. And that's my 2 cents for the day.
Yeah, Jeff. I've witnessed that for the last 2 years. A lot of what I hear Brandon say, yourself say, and I see it everywhere. I'm gonna have to definitely go back and reevaluate that. And I think I'm just gonna leave one last point, which I think falls in line with what you're saying, and ties into what Brandon was saying in Ottawa and such. I have Canadian flags on my vehicle. I have medical freedom decals. I have thank a truck
Paris vehicle.
And I've recently learned, as of today, a family member believes that I'm driving around with swastikas, and that's where like literally, like that's developed today. And, that goes into that whole spiritual battle and demonic. And I can't quote you on things you've said, Jeff, but, I was just kind of blown away that, I'm starting to see the evil in people. And yes, no, I'm not religious. But my eyes are open, my heart's open, my everything's open, my brain's open. That ties into the Ash conformity, is just people are just, Canadians love. I know a friend of ours, Brandon and I, said Canadians love to be told what to do, So
well,
I'm just going to leave it at that.
No, I wanted to say thank you,
Jeff, than I was prepared for.
Jeff. I wanted to thank you for being open and honest, and I apologize because, we get different callers on the program, and I don't apologize because I always say I was once there. I was on the other side where I had a lot of doubt, and I was more agnostic. But at the end of the day, I care about people that are going through life, that are trying to figure it out, including yourself. So first and foremost, I was sharing my belief, and I encourage you to continue to seek. And if I can ever answer, I don't have all the answers, but I found the one person that has radically changed me. And here's the reason why. I'm going to leave you with this. I heard an old saying by an old preacher long ago, and it didn't make sense until one day in 2003, I was driving over the railroad tracks. And I recognized that there was that Jesus was real to me, because that person, that fairy tale character I was told when I was a kid, I've never understood what Easter and all this other stuff meant. But he said, you can only love once you've been loved or forgiven, and then only to the degree with which you've been loved or forgiven. I don't know if you're married or if you have any relationships in your life, but here's the thing. I would not be the man I am today if it weren't for my wife and the love she has for me, and vice versa. But the love that Jesus has for me, continues to forgive me, not because I'm good, because he loves me. That recognition of what he accomplished for me and for you and for Brandon and for anybody else that looks at themselves and go, man, I can't come out and create a star. I mean, I'm pretty smart, but I can't create a star. I didn't create my eye color, my skin color, who I was born to, all this evil that we were just talking about. I can't clean up the mess. Am I just going to be a bunch of worm dirt? And I finally came to the point where I said, what do I need to do? And I repent. I basically agreed with God to say, yeah, I am messed up. I can't clean myself up. What do I have to do? Jesus said, everyone that comes to him, he's lowly and gentle. He's meek. That's control and power. That doesn't mean you're a doormat. And once you get that love deep down in your heart, brother, it'll radically change you and transform you from the inside out. Brandon and Jeff and everybody else, we don't change hearts and minds. Only God himself does. We might be able to engage in a wonderful dialogue. I'm just here to speak the truth. I'm one beggar telling other beggars where I found the bread of life. So I encourage you, if you're trying to figure it out, man, I've been there myself and I feel for you. But listen, the book of Mark, open up the Bible. If you've never read it, I used to think that people were a bunch of kooks that told me how to read the Bible. I encourage you. I don't care if you've never been into a church. This isn't about religion, folks. This is about a personal relationship. Are you married, Jeff?
Yeah, no, I'm not married, but
Okay.
I'm in a very life-ending relationship.
Okay. So you understand what love you have a brother or a sister, you have a mom and dad, right?
Yep.
Okay. So think about when somebody loves, how much are they willing to give up, go to, and be with? If somebody in your family, your friendship circle was hurting or in pain and you had to travel, how far would you be willing to go to save them?
All the way, my friend.
Yeah. Well, Jesus Christ himself did exactly that. And that's not about religion. That's about a relationship. When you realize that the person who loves your soul, who created you, would be willing to enter the time-space continuum he created, that's when you turn and you go, F this, man. I'm done trying to clean up my own self. And you fall on your knees and you go, I'm here, Lord. Use me however you see fit. And then you wind up with a Brando on the go or the Jeff Zapp Show. But Jeff, listen, thank you for being honest and authentic with me. What you see is what you get with this old redhead right here. And I love to be able to share the gospel with others because so many people, including my own brother who's probably listening, they think they've got to clean themselves up or do some magical formula or say some magical prayer. God himself knows exactly what's happening inside your heart. He knows you better than you know yourself. Run to him. Pick up the book. It's called the Book of Mark or the Book of Luke and read it for yourself sometime and you find out yourself, sir. Thanks so much for calling in, Jeff. Have a great evening.
Hey, thank you, Jeff, for all of that. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks for taking my call.
God bless. Take care. Brando, are you there?
I'm still here, man.
All right.
Watching you do your thing.
So that was great. That's I've got to say it, man, because it really chokes me up. I've said that this show would be a success if I could just impact one individual person for the kingdom's sake.
Yeah.
If you're out there right now and you're listening, you're wondering, what is this guy talking about? I totally get what you're saying. I'm not going to go over the gospel again, but here's the deal. We are in the midst of a spiritual battle I don't think we've seen since maybe the Great Flood, okay? God in his retribution, his justice, his righteous judgment sent a flood. He said he would never do it again. If you wonder what I'm talking about, go back and read the Old Testament. The New Testament talks about Jesus Christ. Who is this Jesus? Well, he's the Son of Man. He's the Lion of Judah, right? He is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Why would God take on human flesh? Because there was no other way. The wages of sin, the payment for sin, for what we did, we double-fingered God, and I don't care if we were there or not, our representatives decided to give the middle finger to God and disobey him and figured that they were going to do it on their own. Guess what? It's been nonstop chaos ever since. But God said the only way to save them is that a prophet, priest, and king all wrapped up in one in his mediatorial sense could come to this wicked planet and be perfect and take care of every dot, every tittle of the law, fulfill it, be slaughtered on the cross, hang spread eagle on a town garbage heap,
Yeah.
be buried, and on the third day he rose again. And he said that if you believe in him, like the thief on the cross, he said, today you shall be with me in paradise. That's what it's all about, sports fans. This isn't some fairy tale. Lives are changed, and the personal testimony, including Brandon's and mine and other believers that follow Jesus Christ as best as we can, not in our own strength, but in the power of the Holy Spirit, we try to get through it. And so if you're trying to figure it out, I like the book of Mark. Now, some people say go read the book of John. You go read whatever you want in the New Testament or in the Old Testament. But at the end of the day, it is a wonderful, wonderful thing to finally be able to come to Christ Jesus and to lay down and say, lay at his feet, say, I don't want to do this anymore. I am done trying to perfect my life. And I'm a recovering perfectionist, by the way. I'm very hard on myself. So when I just laid it down and I felt like the weight of the world was lifted, now I was like a Paul on the road to Damascus. My conversion in 2003, when I came over the railroad tracks, as I'm trying to tune, listen to this, I'm trying to tune into the Cleveland, because I'm from Cleveland, Ohio area, trying to listen to the Cleveland Indians, what's going on the 18 a.m. radio on a Sunday morning. I got my cup of coffee, picked up the paper at the local Circle K, and lo and behold, as I'm coming over this railroad track, this little bit of ray of light comes through these clouds, on a cold February day in 2003, trying to listen to Cleveland sports, and a preacher's given the gospel message. And he says, all you have to do is repent, that you would turn and agree with God and give it to him and say, please forgive me, Father, for I have sinned against you and you alone, kind of the prodigal son. And I started crying in my vehicle. But I will tell you that the change was so radical. My wife was like, who are you? Can I have the old Jeff back? And I did a lot of stupid things as a green Christian. Yeah. Said some stupid things. I'm a lot older and a little bit wiser now. I will tell you that the only thing that I've learned is what my buddy Steve Brown says. You can only love or be forgiven once you've been loved or forgiven, and then only to the degree with which you've been given. Brandon, I'm sure you can appreciate this. I said when I listen to you play the guitar and sing a song about the Lord, there's something that stirs within my heart, and I'm sure you feel it too. Everyone does, even if you aren't a believer. We were created to give him glory and honor.
Yeah.
He's the creator, and he knows everything that's happening, and he's got it all under control, and there's no sweat on his upper brow. At the end of the day, my suggestion is if you don't know him, what would it hurt to turn to him? What would it hurt to have a conversation with me or Brandon if you're hurting? Because we're all struggling with something in our lives, whether it's financial, emotional, physical, there's some challenge in our lives. And I say at the end of the day, if we as a hypocritical Christian, if I'm not acting, meaning if people don't want to be around me because I'm some a-hole, then I've got some serious issues that I need to go back to the drawing board and reevaluate my relationship with Christ, because I always say we should be the most curious, the people that folks want to be around, not because we're condemning, but we're like, hey, did you realize that like you're forgiven and you're free and it's radical and it totally changes it. Oh, by the way, death, the sting of death, it's been defeated, and Satan, that dragon, his tail's still wagging, but he's a defeated foe, man. Jesus conquered all. He said it's finished. It's on the cross. It's a done deal, man. It's it. And so if you hear me tonight and you're wondering why I'm so fired up, is because, listen, folks, we're moving to the end of the scroll, whenever that is. I don't know when it is. I don't know how much time I have left. Unless you take your own life, and I'm not suggesting that you do. I'm saying at some point, it's still 1-to-1, right? It's 100%. I watched my dad die and my father-in-law within the period of a few months 5 years ago. It radically changed the way I looked at life. Get busy living or get busy dying. Stop your bitching, whining, and complaining. Think about things to give thanks for, because there's plenty of them out there. Brandon said this yesterday. I'm going to shut up. He said, you were talking about how you were thankful for some of the things in your life. You never appreciate the good things until you go through some of the difficult situations. A kite never rises to its highest level unless it's got a good stiff wind, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the way it is in life. And I think someday we're going to be in heaven where it's finally going to be paradise and perfect. And we're going to get down and boogie, man. It's going to be great, because there are going to be ulterior motives, and there's not going to be any of the nonsense like Jeff McCoy mentioned about, like, what I perceive that as kind of your perspective, meaning your metanoia, your preconceived notion of life and how you look at it ultimately determines how you perceive what you perceive. Do you see it through the lens of a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Shaolin priest, whatever, man? But there's only one truth. I hate to break it to you. If you think that there's multiple truths, man, go smoke a bong or something, because you're not there yet. And I'm not afraid to say that, because that's just the way I roll, man. There's only one truth. And guess what? Paul said, out of all the religions, boy, if what we believe isn't true, if Jesus wasn't who he claimed to be, which historically we know it is true, and if Jesus said he was truth, he was the only way, then there's only that way. There's no other way. I'm sorry, but I didn't say it. He did. And he's been defending himself since the beginning of time. So I don't have to do it. So I'll shut up now, Brandon. Thanks for listening to me ramble.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, it's so interesting how you were talking to Jeff about it being a spiritual battle. And I shared with you yesterday how on my channel, I create these informational videos. Usually they're to do with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and just different things that happen throughout our country. But this week, after our what we call our Momentum Mondays, it's our special with the four of us that chat on different subjects. I think it was Mr. Brooke Day. He's one of our contributors, and I think it was him. He was bringing up the fact that it is a spiritual battle, and we talked a lot about that tonight. And it set me off down this road to start thinking about this next video I wanted to make, and it's done. I finished it today, but it's interesting because I uploaded it and YouTube blocked it. Yeah. I don't want it up. I got to take some content out, but it's just interesting how this is the third roadblock I've hit, and it's been the most difficult video, but it's probably because of the message that's in it, which is everything that Jeff just went over about the cross, about giving up on religion. One of the analogies I use is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The dirty bathwater is the religion, and Christ is that baby. We got to hold on to it because it's truth, right? And I mean, as much as I know I get on about it, getting kind of fed up with people that won't wake up. But are we willing to wake up spiritually? Right? We got to ask ourselves that as well, because
here's kind of what I wanted to kind of piggyback on, because I was listening today, and I had to share this because it's really important for folks to understand this, when sometimes they might hear where Christians are intolerant, or for some reason that we think we have monopoly on the truths. That's not the case. Listen, if you hear my voice tonight, you think I'm some holier than thou. I am not. I am messed up, and I mean that to the core of who I am as a person. I am not that person that thinks I'm some religious, some Pharisee, some guy that's got it all together. I don't. But I heard this today, and I was reading the scripture this morning, which I try to do every morning. If you go back, listen, if you've never heard our program before, go back to the debut and go back through Authentic Manhood and some of the other messages, and you'll get a little better feel for who I am, okay? But in the book of Romans, which is in the New Testament, Romans 1:18 says this, and I'm not going to go into a big sermon here, but I just want everyone to hear the scripture because it has power. I'm not ashamed of the gospel, by the way, all right? So, and verse 16, it says, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth." to the Jew first and also to the Greek or to the Gentile. Romans 1:18 talks about the wrath of God, and it's really important because the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. So basically, the suppression of the truth. What I mentioned earlier, today, what's happening in today's world, the suppression of truth is essentially what we've come to. So people that have the control of the media, the entertainment, Hollywood, so they're the ones that continue to suppress the truth. And I always say it's like a beach ball.
Yep.
The natural law of a beach ball, if you try to hold it underwater, it wants to do what? It wants to surface, right? What you would do, what you're doing, and others like you and like me, from a gospel perspective, I believe, this is my 2 cents after I heard this today, is that we are the ones that are speaking truth. We're kind of the town crier, the one standing out there in the wilderness that continues to beat the drum to say, no, listen, this is the truth. They're not going to like it. And sometimes it's inconvenient and uncomfortable to say. And it's quite awkward. Like with Jeff, I started feeling like, boy, this guy's going to probably think I'm a big douche if I ask him, does he believe in Jesus? But guess what? We're dealing with the spiritual realm here. So at the heart of the issue, you and I both know until you come to the light, you're going to be in the dark. Jesus said to a lot of the people that were around him, you're the father, the devil, or the father the heavenly father, you know him. Yeah. And that pushed a lot of people away. He never minced his words. He said that he was the truth. So what do? We try to truth tell to the best of our ability because we're still fallen, right? Are we forgiven of our sin? Absolutely. We're born again. Jesus said only those that are born again can enter. And he's talking to Nicodemus, who was like this really, religious dude, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I believe that's what we're doing is that beach ball is going to surface soon, man. And once it does, it makes it, and the truth comes out. But until then, I believe you and I and others have to continue to speak the truth in love. That's the underlying thing here, love, which is in Greek, you can look it up. It's agape. Mm-hmm. And agape isn't an emotional, feel good, phileo or eros. It's a willful, it's love in action, man. Go read 1 Corinthians 13 and see what my brother Paul has to say about it, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing, brother. And I'm just, I'm getting long-winded and I'm sorry to do this. It is my show. Oh. I'm grateful. And I said this to you before. My mom, I went up and helped my mom today. If she's listening, Mom, I love you. Thanks for the brownies. They're really tasty. I wanted to say this to you because I think it's amazing to me how God continues to use someone as messed up as me and as you, but he's brought us together in this fashion to be able to exhort and to encourage, to love one another. And you know what? And if I'm doing something wrong, like I said, I would want you to say, hey, Jeff, say it to me in a gentle, respectful way. And I'd be like, you're right. I really flubbed that one up, didn't I? I love how God continues to use Jesus uses his church, the body, every single believer universally through our experiences and our relationships and our time and our talent and our treasures to build his church. Because he said the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Folks, he's coming back. He's the Lion of Judah. You better look busy because he's coming back and he's going to clean up the mess. And then it's going to be forever. If you still have breath in your lungs and you're still trying to figure out who this Jesus is, he's given you the opportunity and the time to go to him. I always say, run to Jesus, let him clean up the mess himself. And when you do that, then you'll find the love and the forgiveness and the grace that only he can provide. Brandon, I'm going to give you the last word of the program here before we sign off because I didn't realize it was getting so late. Sorry.
No, dude. Oh, this is awesome. First of all, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so important what you're talking about because when you leave out the fact that, because it's so easy to get caught up in politics, right? You can get lost in the arguments and everything, and you forget that it's a spiritual battle. You forget to even step back and pray, as simple as that is, right? Sometimes I get so busy throughout the day running my channels, running my stuff. A whole day goes by. I'm like, I didn't even talk to God, right? The guy who's telling me, you know what, I have this under control. And
Yeah.
I guess that's the hard part, right? Because I understand that, spoiler alert, God wins in the end, right? But
Right.
where do I fit in that plan? And am I stepping back long enough to figure that out and to hear God on that? So that's the challenge, and that's what I guess I encourage your listeners to do, is to make sure you have that healthy balance of action, but also listening to God and making sure that's the action He wants you to take. And I think God will give you that sense of, it's like
Yeah.
almost a sixth sense where it's God saying, yeah, this is your opportunity to stand up and do something. And that's what I found. I think it is a God thing that I show up to City Hall, because what you were mentioning before, I forget how you worded it, but we need each other. And
Mm-hmm.
it's out of love that I show up. I hope. That's my intention anyway, because I want people
Well,
to
to the
know.
best of your ability, right? We all have a kind of a bent. It's not perfect. It's not, whether it's your theology or motives, none of these are perfect. But if your intention is the best, right, and you can provide, then I
Yeah.
think it says a lot about your character, buddy.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. And that's it, man. That's being there
Yeah.
for one another.
I think now more than ever. And here's the thing: I'm going to say a couple things to those that are leadership in the pulpit. I was involved with men's ministry and have been for a number of years.
Mhm.
Um, I stepped away from the local church when some folks were saying some nasty things about me because I helped out on the Trump campaign. I actually worked with the Secret Service. I'm not saying that, give myself a plug, but I think
Hmm.
I told you I've had an opportunity. God's allowed me to meet a lot of very wealthy, very influential people. I just realized, listen, they're just the same as you and me. I don't care who it is, whether it's the janitor or the president of the world or Jesus. All right.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it's a little different meeting the king himself, but at the end of the day, right, when I look at all of these things that we have recognized, that in terms of people, I guess that's the thing that I want to is, whether it's Donald Trump or anybody else, we need to recognize that those that are in the pulpit in the church, they should be talking more about politics, about what's happening, because politics, I think Andrew Breitbart said, politics is always downstream of culture. The culture and how we influence the culture, what you're talking about, going to the town hall, local action, right? All of these things. But when you start to take God, his morality out of the culture, it's a very
Mhm.
slippery slope. What starts to happen is they start to say, well, it's okay to do this. Well, that was okay then, but that's actually it's fine now. And pedophilia, that it was once bad, but it's pretty good. Cannibalism was once bad, but today it's really, and here's what's on the menu tonight, and you're for dinner. So we're going to have you over for dinner. We're going to have you for dinner.
Yeah.
So do you see what I'm saying? It's a very
Yeah.
slippery slope. As soon as you get away from the app, say, well, you can be a homosexual or a transvestite or fill in the blank. And people are like, oh, you can't say anything about that in the pulpit. Oh, excuse me. Yes, you can. And if you go back and listen to some of the old sermons, the Reformation taught us, Martin Luther, of one thing is we need to start standing up, not in a way that is derogatory, but
Yeah.
guess what? Love, like I said, how much are you willing to give up, go to, and be with? Sometimes you
Mhm.
need to travel thousands of miles just to sit next to somebody and hold their hand and cry with them as they suffer a loss or horrific tragedy.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a little push, a little hand up, little encouragement.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to laugh with somebody, right?
Yeah.
Sometime you might need to lay your life down for somebody.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, my friend, that's what we in the church need to be doing, is speaking the truth. And I don't care what lifestyle or what background they are. If we're not speaking, we're not preaching, if we're not communicating the gospel, let me say that. If we're not communicating the gospel the way the master does and did,
Mhm.
then we better check ourselves. And those out in the pulpit today, I'm talking to you. For those that are here in the pulpit in the United States of America that are saying we've got to do something about this gun violence, it's the gun's fault. Excuse me. But you better check yourself too, because guess what? You're in a place of leadership. God will hold you accountable for your words and your actions. I know where I stand, but I will tell you, those people that are being used, you're being used by the dark side. You better look at yourself and have a come to Jesus meeting real soon. I'm hearing more and more people say, oh, we got to do something. We got to, my goodness, look at Chicago, Illinois. You've got enough laws on the books, and you think another law, you're not going to legislate your way out of this morale issue. There's an evil element that's happening, and these people are brothers and sisters in Christ. I am the town crier, and I feel called. You better pay attention. And I'm talking to those around the globe, but here specifically in the U.S. with all this rhetoric, it's happening right now and up in Canada. I know Trudeau 2 days ago had mentioned it. That's all I can say, I guess, is I'm getting fired up, but I do appreciate you coming on the program, man. And thanks for listening to me. I do look at you as kind of like a younger brother because, like I said, you've given me hope. You've given me inspiration because we have young men and women coming up of your age. That gives me great hope for the future because that's what we need, man. We need somebody to do what's right and to be loving. And as my buddy Al Flower says, be kind.
Awesome. Yeah, dude. Thank you. Thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. I'd love to have you on again. And maybe we could stick to the topics. I still have about 3 or 4 questions left. So maybe once I get back from, we have a chance to.
We got to start earlier in the day. So just keep going.
Yeah, I'm telling you what, I'm ready to go have my smoke break. So anyway, all right, listen, that's it for tonight, folks. I appreciate you joining Brandon McCaskill. Brandon, tell them one more time where they can find you on YouTube and on all your social media as well.
Yeah, so you can find me at Brando on the Go on YouTube, Brandon McCaskill on Facebook, Brando on the Go on Twitter, and also Instagram. I don't use Instagram that often, but if you want to send me an email, you can do that. That's Brandon McCaskill, VO, Victor, Ontario, at gmail.com.
Great. All right, folks, that's it for tonight. I'm Jeff Zapp along with Brandon McCaskill, my guest. Thanks again, Brandon, for being here. We will see everyone. Actually, real quick, administratively, I forgot. I'm on vacation again next week. I'm taking my daughter to see a college down in Florida, so we won't be back until the Tuesday after. Thanks so much for tuning in. Whether you're new or old listeners, listen every Tuesday and Thursday right here on the Jeff Zapp Show, or go to thejeffzappshow.com and follow us. All the latest broadcasts and archives you will find there. It's been a pleasure, Brandon. Have a beautiful evening. We're going to sign off for now. We'll see you all. Thanks for tuning in. Would you please do me a big favor? Like, subscribe, and share this content with your family and friends. Send your questions, comments, or requests for interviews to info@thejeffzappshow.com. Visit our website at thejeffzappshow.com to sign up for our newsletter, catch up on archive shows, or to link to our social media. See you next time right here on The Jeff Zapp Show.